Those of
Awesome.
for those of you that are just joining us, this is Ann Kelly. Welcome to Therapist Uncensored. And I'm sitting here with a very excited Sue Marriott, who, if you are not seeing this on YouTube, is wearing her wonderful, bright, lighted Beyonce hat.
That's right. It's a white cowboy hat that has lights flickering. Hope you can see it. And my T-shirt that says "Strong Texas Women," because today is when our book is finally released, and I'm feeling celebratory and relieved and excited. And how about you? Where are you
Oh,
right now?
every bit of that. I don't have my own Texas hat on, but boy, my heart's is lighting up because today's the day. Yeah, if you're listening to this episode on the day it gets published, then you're also listening on the day that our book just got released. That is April 30th, 2024. Woohoo! And
Yes.
we wanted to jump on and have this episode be one of celebration, and we thought we'd kind of like start telling you what's in it.
All
Why
right,
we're excited.
I'm going to change my lighting occasionally just to keep it mixed up. Yes. Okay. So here's our plan. Is what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on. It has three big sections, and we're going to do a deeper dive. Today's episode is going to be really looking into the first section. That way, if you don't have the book, can't ever get the book, don't want to buy the book, that's cool. There's still so much information in here worth sharing, and yeah, we want to share it with you and we want to celebrate with you. Also, before we go too far, this will only work if you happen to be listening to it the day it comes out. But tomorrow, which is May 1st, there is a incredible online launch. And I say incredible because, Anne, you and I could never have dreamed. We would have never in a million years dreamed of what this has morphed into. Do you want to say a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. So Robin Goebel is going to be co-hosting with us. And we have invited so many of our past guests that are just powerhouses, those that we respect. We were excited each time we got each one of them on the podcast. Everybody from Alan Shroof to Carol George, attachment gurus. And
Debbie Jacobitz is coming, and although she has resisted coming onto the podcast, I think she's rather shy. She is one of the big attachment researchers, so she's going to be joining her friends Carol and Alan. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, and then we have individuals that have been working with and reading, or not even always working with, but just like everyone that's been in the field know these names. But
yeah, we've been reading about them, studying them, learning from them for many years.
We just finished our recording our episode with David Elliott, and he's going to be there, and he was excited to meet these individuals. Stan Tatkin, Lori Gottlieb,
Tina Payne Bryson.
Oh yeah, Tina Payne Bryson.
Yeah, Linda Ty, Ariel Schwartz. There are so many incredible people. You started to say Liz Plank. There's also some local folks that are amazing. There's some other, we won't, since this is only going to be good for one episode as far as what you missed, we won't name everybody, but it is a powerhouse group. If you enjoyed a recent episode we just did with Sheena Young, Dr. Sheena is going to join us. Lyceria Perez, Deborah Chapman Finley, so many of just the amazing group. Dan Siegel is a maybe, and so is Jill Bolte Taylor. So if you would like,
they're hopefully going to get to pop on. They
in.
have, yeah, they're going to try to do that.
So if you would like to join, the idea, it's a book launch. We encourage you to buy the book, but honestly, at this point, just come. If you're listening to this and you're interested, just come. Go to therapistsuncensored.com and then look for the events page and look at the virtual launch. That's how you RSVP. That's how you'll get the link. And also, by the way, we'll probably be live streaming it, I think, on Facebook. So if you don't do that, then look on Facebook at 6 p.m. CST Central Time. And that way you'll get to see everybody from wherever you are in the world. And that'll be so fun.
And we can't necessarily promise it's going to be but we will record it, right?
Oh, I think we're going to live stream it. We're going to
we are.
record it. We're going to live stream it. This is a big deal. All these people together in one place at one time, cooperating, mutually supporting one another. It is just, I would never in a million dreams have imagined this level of support ever.
I know. It's so exciting. And truthfully, your hard ass work is a big part of this happening.
Both of our hard ass works.
Yes, but your hard ass work making this launch happen, man, that is an amazing feat. And it connects to our book, which is, obviously it connects to our book because it's the launch of the book. So that's not rocket scientist. But I guess what I'm saying is the fact that people are going to come is connected to the passion of our book. And that is, our book is Secure Relating, Holding Your Own in an Insecure World. And the major premises is that we need to stick together in connection. That a lot of the pain that we are experiencing in our communities and our families and across the world has to do with the feeling of activation, defensiveness, divisiveness, polarization, and pulling together in connection. And all of these people that are joining us have been on our podcast,
including all the audience members that have already RSVP'd, the whole community. Any of you listening right now, even, I'm sure, unless you're just happen to drop in for the first time, which welcome, we're super happy to have you. We hope you stick around. But we have dedicated listeners that have been supporting us all the way through. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I'm just wanting to widen this community event to include every single one of you listening, everybody that's going to be there at the virtual launch tomorrow.
But I guess what I'm saying is it's not necessarily supporting us. Yes, of course, I love you guys for supporting us and being there. But if you're listening to this or if you're on this podcast, it's because you care and are trying to do your part to help yourself and other people relate more securely in the world. These researchers have been studying attachment. These therapists and clinicians that write about things have been promoting helping people stay connected in their own theoretical way, in their own models. And if you're a listener out there, you're listening because you want to ground yourself and help ground your relationships and other people. And that's what this is all about. This is a connection of people who really believe in deepening security and spreading that far and wide. And when we started the podcast, it was spreading security one conversation at a time was our tagline, and it continues to be. And now it is through our book that we're trying to also spread it. So I am a real encourager of you getting the book. I know Sue said, get the book, don't get the book. I'm going to say, no, get the book. but partly it's get the book because we've done so much work in there to try to really bring years of work to try to bring the sciences out. Like you said the last time, from what was it that you said in the
from the annals of research.
From the annals. That's an Easter egg. If you guys know where that came from, we're
digging it out of the.
So only really long-term followers are going to know what we're meaning in that. But our goal has been, and in this book is bringing the most updated and thoroughly researched information out there to the everyday public in a way that we can all understand, connect to, share in, and make use of.
That's right. And translate that. A lot of this is really complex. And also, when you just go and you read the direct neuroscience, it can be really depressing about the effect of trauma on the brain. It's depressing to look out and see the climate. It's depressing to look out and see the division and open your phones and be able to scroll live war, whether you're meaning to or not, right? Mass shootings. Those things they hurt us. They hurt our nervous system. And we're not saying not to look and not to be engaged. We're saying the opposite, that if we can have hope, like if you get overwhelmed and you cut off, that's just being part of the problem. And that sometimes we do have to do that. I'm not giving you a hard time. But I think what we're saying through this book and on this podcast and right now is that if we can only, this is all too overwhelming for any individual, but collectively together, if we can hold each other and hold each other accountable and with support and with love and with care to stay engaged and to do what we can do and to stay active, that is way better than getting overwhelmed in despair. And so, and also the news and our brains have a hitch, which is that we scan for danger. We can't help it. So what that means is the news that we're receiving in the world is all going to have this negative tilt. It's like, the person just set themselves on fire outside of the Trump rally, right? Like, that's over everything. Live views of that. What's not on the news is this. What's not on the news is you, where you are right now, striving to overcome your own impulses to give up or to get angry, bitter, to just assume to live in certainty so we're not challenged, so that we're more comfortable. That doesn't make the news. That's what we're trying to highlight. That's what this is about.
Exactly. It doesn't make the news when things go well. It makes the news and grabs our attention. And our brains are, like you said, our brains are going to search for that. How do we take all this amazing capacity that we have as humans to be in connection? Because really, this whole thing we were talking about, everybody getting together for the celebration and talk about secure relating, is because we actually, even though our brains are set to look for disconnection, we have survived this long because of our connection, because of our ability to stay connected. We're not actually the survival of the fittest. I loved that. I think who was that said that? Was that Dacker? We aren't the survival of the fittest. We're the survival of the friendliest. And that is, as we have learned to collaborate and coordinate and work together, that is how we've progressed. And we can't forget that. So we have to find our ability to collaborate again and to coordinate, and to be able to do that. We deeply need to look at the science of attachment and neurobiology about what helps us do that and what gets us far, far away from that. And that's what our book is about.
That's right. And what I kind of like too, Anne, is like our language is secure relating, right? But like everybody that's coming to the launch tomorrow, those incredible researchers and clinicians and writers, they're all producing incredible work. And again, many listeners are as well. And everybody, I think, like, for example, Ariel Schwartz will be there. She's working on using yoga and trauma-informed yoga to calm the vagus nerve. Linda Tai is doing amazing work in this. So everybody has their own language. This is our particular language, but it's not the only language. But if we soft focus it and we look at this big collective, we're all pushing in the same direction towards human connection, towards mutuality, and towards what we're calling secure, or I would even say mature instead of immature relating.
Yes. Yes.
Boom.
Boom. And we all have to start this journey together, but also it's about holding your own. That's why the title of the book is Holding Your Own, because the more we can learn, it's so tempting to think the answers to the world out there is if they would just do this, and this, or if everybody else would, or it's like trying to beg that we could sort of get a grip. But what we really need to do is hold our own. We have to learn what activates us, how to tolerate differences, how to tolerate a lot of discomfort in our body. This isn't about us all holding hands together and just say, let's just get along, because that isn't going to happen. It is about learning to tolerate this deep discomfort that happens in our body when we get threatened. It's about learning what threatens you and what threatens me and what threatens us as a culture, what threatens us in our own family. And when we are threatened, what happens in our body so that we can recognize it. And then how we're really learning strategies for grounding ourselves so that we can live more in our secure selves. And our secure selves are the ones that can tolerate differences and have flexible thinking and actually listen and take things in.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when we are in our secure mind, we are less prejudiced, we discriminate less, we other people less. We're more generous. We're more compassionate. So, I had just described everybody has their different language, but our lane is very much this. I love the way you just described it, of like really decoding what our nervous system is doing so that we can outsmart our nervous system and move back towards the connection system instead of the protection system. Don't worry.
It's really loud. Just wait. Okay. All right. So let's take the book. Like I love the idea. Let's kind of go through the process. And we mentioned that the book is in 3 sections, but there's a reason it's in 3 sections, because the book is written in the process of what we see happens when we try to make deep development in our body. Right? When we learn something, we don't just go, aha, I got it. And now that leads to change. That isn't what happens. You don't get to pick up a book. We love it. We wish we could say, pick up this book, and once you finish it, you can integrate everything and it's right there. But change happens through a cycle. And we entitled it the 3R cycle.
The 3R spiral of healing is the title.
3R spiral of healing.
It's the 3R spiral of healing. That's right. But before we get into the first R, and by the way, our idea with this episode is that even later, if you're reading the book, perhaps you can come back and revisit this episode, and maybe we can give a little bit even more juice to it. But also we want to hear from y'all as you read it. By the way, as you get your books, anybody that's pre-ordered is about to get them in their hands, please take a picture and post it and tag us and let us see and give us feedback. We really want to know from our listeners what you think. But before we jumped into the first section, I wanted to start with our dedication. And I want to read that out loud and just spend just a second there. So it says, dedicated to all the sturdy survivors out there who have shouldered the care for those who weren't able to care enough for themselves. Mm. So dedicated to all the sturdy survivors out there who have shouldered the care for those who aren't able to care for themselves. So what is your association to that?
It's such a short dedication, but boy, is it powerful. And did it take some time to really decide what we wanted to dedicate the book to? My association, and it was very important to say who aren't able, not unwilling, not refusing to, but unable to take care of themselves. And that there's so many individuals that have had pain and trauma and generational abuse that are addiction. Yes, addiction, all sorts of things that are not, that have never had the resources or been resourced enough to be able to more deeply take care of themselves. And it evokes other individuals to hold their weight sometimes.
And the people, even now you're hearing a lot about overdoses and opioid epidemic, but we don't hear about it makes me emotional thinking about it, of all of those human beings behind them, the mothers, the sisters, the brothers, the siblings that have been carrying the load that this person couldn't carry, or the difficulty that they created. The worrying about them, cleaning up, getting them in treatment, doing all of the labor. And we wanted to really highlight all of you, every single one of you that might have a brother or an uncle or a father or a mother or whoever it is that you love or that is in your family, in your life, that you've had to do more than your fair share. And I almost can't think of anybody in our immediate circle that's not true for. I had a brother, my younger brother, died of an overdose, an accidental overdose to opiates. And he had been troubled his entire life. And I have a mother and a sister and myself who literally took turns kind of taking care of him and struggled. And that's just one example. Fathers and uncles and so many people. And I know, without going into detail, you have a version of this as well. And I can't think of anybody who doesn't in our world, I don't know why that is. Uh, that I don't know what do you think it's like genetic luck or something that we've been able to be more functional than some of the people around us?
Um, I think it has literally to do with having other people that were supportive, like even those individuals that sometimes that we're taking care of had spent time at a different part of their life taking care of us when those other
Yeah,
people couldn't, you know.
that's so
And I
true.
you know, I think it has to do with systems, it has to do with luck, it has to do with privilege, it has to do with so many different things about being able to carry and hold. And I think of the people that have held my weight when I haven't been able to carry it, you know. And I think of too, like even if you think about your
Has
brother.
there really been a time that you haven't been able to carry your weight in, Kelly?
Oh my gosh, yes, there has.
For like
So
30 seconds or
no.
something?
I was thinking about, like, if we think about people like what you were just saying, we're thinking about your brother. He held the weight, though. If you think about it, he had to carry the burden and the weight of those before him that didn't carry it. And if you think about systemic abuse and to think about him being a man and the culture that he was raised in and how much some of that burden was handed to him because they
Totally.
weren't able to hold it. So this dedication,
It crushed him. It crushed
it
him.
crushed him.
And you're right. We can run it up the line. We can go up
Right.
the genetic line or the familial line or however, our
Yeah.
ancestors. God, if you think about even just let's just widen it for just a second. I didn't mean to
Right.
get stuck here, but like you said, that like the people that came before, and we didn't have psychiatric medication, and we
Mm-mm.
didn't have therapy. We had natural healers,
Mhm.
but so many people in pain and in trauma from legacy from way forward. And I like to think too of like, so those of us, and I was joking earlier when I said, has anybody ever had to carry your weight? Of course that must be true. And I certainly carry it for you, and you carry it for me. It's not really like we're weightless and we're carrying other people's weight,
Mm-mm.
for sure. And I appreciate you saying that. But I also think about all the hard work. I mean, really the hard work and therapy and just our own personal growth. And like you said, the privileges that we've had to be able to do some of that work, that that is changing. We're talking about going historical, but we can also look at going forward. And the people who will benefit, who won't have to do this to some degree, and 2 or 3 generations ahead, that are being impacted by all of us that are holding weight for those who can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're just really wanting to recognize that if you're out there and you're listening and you're doing the work, you likely are carrying weight for other people. For those that maybe are in a relationship where the partner won't look more deeply and yet you love them, that's painful and that's hard. And you end up carrying more of, you likely carry more of the emotional weight. And I think we wanted to really do a nod out there for everyone that really is in the trenches doing it. And if we think about this more globally, we all may be carrying some of the weight, and we are going to have to carry the weight for those that are going to choose not to and that are going to stay more in their defensive, polarized, reactive, us and them thinking. And the truth is, we need to be sturdy survivors, all of us, of this crazy world right now, and collectively unify so that we are more sturdy, so that we change the trajectory and we're not led by those who are not doing their work. It's
We're
so
not, yeah.
yeah, it's so easy to be led or driven by that through those that get to choose what news goes on our feed, the algorithms, or the politicians who promote division and
Who
activation in
incite
us.
us, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many, or that create laws that create divisions and uncertainty. And I'd like to revisit it as to reconceptualize that, is that those are individuals that are not right now, for whatever reason, able to do their own work, to look at their own activation and to go more deeply, so that They're focused on security and building connection in a more stable world instead of a more unstable, rigid world. So we need more of us out there being sturdy survivors and working
Right.
together.
So, but I definitely have something to say about this because even though we're talking about carrying more than our fair share of the weight, the other thing we're talking about is holding our own. And
Mm.
so being able to be aware of the impact of being dragged down sometimes by people who refuse to look, who put their shoulder into doing harm, which there are people that are doing that. It's not just that they don't know to go in therapy. It's that they
Mm.
refuse because that there's too much for them to lose, that they're benefiting from the status quo. So they do active things to make sure that status quo continues. And so holding your own also means not holding weight of some of these folks that are
Mm.
have just, I'm just thinking of just the traditional what is it, man spreading. Right, like, so they're if a guy is sitting and his legs are really wide and he's in our space, like, we're the ones that will tend to pull over. And holding your own might mean spreading your legs. You know what I mean? Like having a little conflict with his knee because he's in your space. So it's not at all rolling over. It really is noticing um, the impact of your work and what you're doing and how much you're holding. And also at the same time, being connected across interpersonally, that sometimes we are still going to do that even if we're the ones holding more of our weight. So I didn't mean to go down that whole rabbit hole, but um,
I think it's really relevant, though. Yeah. I mean,
it's
because you,
I resonate so deeply, and I know so many people do.
right, right. Well, I think there's no rabbit hole. That's like, what do we mean by holding your own? I think that's the whole intent, and this whole episode may be the dedication and the title, evidently. So, but it's yeah, like, what does holding your own mean? It's awareness of self and others. So it's awareness of holding yourself, but also recognizing the triggers, et cetera, of other individuals. And holding your own probably doesn't mean, you know, stepping on the foot, and, it means being able to hold self and be clear and hold others that they may not be aware of the space they're taking up. And how do we bring awareness by holding self in recognition of what may be happening for other people when they're not holding their own, or when they're missing it, or when they're thrown off, and so that we can bring awareness.
Right. So, like, even with the man spreading, that holding your own, maybe no one's ever pushed against his knee, and he needs
Mhm.
that feedback. And he
Mhm.
might appreciate that feedback, not be unaware because the world kind of divides for him. You know what I mean? Gives him room. Um, so holding your own really is also about holding other people accountable
Yeah, because it's
and
healing. It's
and
healing for
pressing.
other
That's right.
people. I love to
That's
say
right.
that. I love to say that in couples, as that when somebody's complaining, it's usually gonna advance the system
That's right.
more than
It's
we think.
progressive.
It's
That's right. It's
progressive because we
right.
don't know, when you complain about me, often you're wrong, but but occasionally you may be giving me information that I
That
need
you
to
need.
hear. That I need to hear occasionally. I have
Phil
to be
Bromberg. Phil Bromberg talks about. He's one of my favorite psychoanalysts. Talks about that if you're sitting with somebody and you're having reactions about them or created with them, to not share it is withholding because it's actually a shared experience. And of course, he's mainly talking to therapists about that if you're having a significant reaction and not using it, that it really is robbing the person of information that they need. So that's just another way of saying exactly what you said. So
I
can
think,
we?
well, except that now you got me going. Now you got me because, well, because I was thinking about the question earlier when you said, "And have you ever not been holding up?" And I think about all the ways I haven't, because I haven't spoken up. Do you know what I'm saying? Um, in an ability, like, sometimes when we're holding, I'm thinking about the sturdy survivors out there that we're referencing, that people hopefully may tune into themselves as I have been a sturdy survivor holding a lot of weight, but sometimes we can walk around the world being sturdy survivors holding weight without really going deeply in ourselves about why we're doing that.
Oh, that's
What
so true.
right,
That
what
can be
is
an
it?
armor.
Yeah, what is it about I mean, in some ways not holding my own weight by trying to hold too much weight. Does
That's
that make
right.
sense? Right?
Oh,
Like
totally. It can be a defense, and 100%.
it's totally like being the over functioning one as a defense away from vulnerability, away from fear, away from things. Oh my gosh, if I don't hold it, everything's going to fall apart. So it's also an encouragement, which we talk about in the book, of sort of having more reflective functioning about that. Am I holding it rather than just feeling resentment because I walk around? That's not what I'm saying that I've been feeling, but it's easy to feel like a sturdy survivor, meaning I feel resentful because I keep holding all this weight, to being reflective and going, wait, what is it about me that I'm feeling the need to hold all that weight,
Right,
and
exactly.
that without speaking up and without standing up and holding my own is learning more and more and more to do that.
So for you, holding your own is partly learning how to not hold other people
Yes. Yeah.
and to need more. So
Mhm.
every time you say the word sturdy survivor, I think about at one point I did an evaluation with an MMPI, and we talk about the high four just very briefly. The high four on the MMPI is one way of thinking of it is that it's not antisocial, but it's roughly the higher you are on it, the more likely you are going to break norms and things like that. And I have a elevated four, and that shows up in wonderful ways, and I love it actually. However, the way that it was described to me about what it meant, it didn't mean necessarily that I was just out for myself and just breaking norms and running through a stop sign in the middle of a mall parking lot because there's nobody around. It's like stupid to have a stop sign there, so you just go through it, like silly things. But what I'm getting to is that the way that was described to me was that was an adaptation. It was described as sturdy survivor, like that I had to learn. I didn't have people there that I could not know and let them, like an authority figure, to trust. So I became my own authority figure, and the with along with the rest of my profile, my high four meant more about sturdy survivor. So there was a sturdiness to it. It can be kind of elbowy or what have you. Not that you would know anything about that, but about my elbows.
Uh-huh.
But I just, that's what comes to my mind, and I love it. And I think that there's so many people in the world that can relate to what we're describing. But we should probably move on. What do you think?
I think we should. Let's
So,
move out of the dedication, shall we?
well, I wanted to make one more quick comment before we get to the specific content, which is that one of the things we did, and I'm really appreciative of HarperCollins doing this, is that and this was suggested to us by some folks, and I'm so happy we did, which was, it's a small thing, but moving the acknowledgments to the front of the book. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very representational of how we feel and what we mean, which is that we start there and we start with our humility and our acknowledgments, and then everything flows from there, versus it being stuck in the very back. Nobody ever sees it, and it's almost like a happenstance. So thank you, HarperCollins. I won't say more about that.
Well, I will, because
But
it represents what we were talking about earlier. We need to start with our acknowledgement because it includes so many contributors to the way we think, how we've been trained, the way we
right,
orchestrate
exactly.
ourselves. Yeah. Yeah.
So another thing I noticed, you read for the Audible. By the way, guys, it's on Audible. Pick it up at Audible. Super cool. And read for us. Thank you. And then there's also a little
That was hard, by the way.
yeah, there's a conversation that she and I have at the end, which was really fun.
Yeah.
But why was I bringing that up? Oh, that I noticed that they didn't include the forward, not the forward, but the acknowledgments in the Audible.
Mm.
Uh,
Oh,
so
really? Okay.
yeah, I don't. Well, you would have read them, and I don't think you did, right?
No, that's a
Unless it was
very
in
good
the.
point. No, I didn't. That's right.
So the Audible leaves out the acknowledgments. I don't know exactly what that's about, but
Mm-hmm.
just FYI. Okay, so so part one: recognition, the power of
Well,
awareness.
I think let's talk about the 3 R's, how we wrote
All right,
it. So we
all right.
did it in the 3R
Healing
Um,
spiral.
the healing spiral, and that's how the book is divided into 3 parts. So the first part of the book is recognition, because if you don't recognize what's going on, it's very hard to heal it. So it's the power of awareness. And then the second section of the book is reflection, or building agency, and ways to really understand what's going on once you recognize it. And then the last part, exciting part, rewiring, creating the deep change that you're hoping to have. So that's
Yeah.
just the
And this
broad.
isn't, that's right. And this isn't brand new, right? Different people have a different way of
Right.
describing it. I noticed that David Elliott's work in his course, these kind of, they correspond. So recognition, part of it is like, so many of us, or let's say you're in therapy, but your spouse isn't, right? They're not even on the path of becoming aware. He talks about collaboration, verbal and nonverbal collaboration. And to me, it roughly corresponds with like getting on board with that there's something to do, noticing that things aren't just the concrete way we think of them, but that there's this
Mm-hmm.
whole beautiful, rich world, inner world that we can't see, that we can begin to explore. So, and then the second one, metacognition, being sort of roughly, like beginning to make sense of things, beginning to build a scaffold and a frame. Part two is when we're recognizing our triggers and we're putting it together and we're creating the story. It's very generative. And then the last one, his is about using imagination to rewire and to change your internal working model. Exactly fits with our third spiral. And why we say spiral, not steps, is because that's just the way it is. It's not linear. And I think of like a corkscrew, you know what I mean? You go down and things are terrible. You come back up, yay. You go down again and you revisit a lot of the themes, but it's not a
Right.
circle. You're not in the exact same place. You've moved ahead a little bit. And each time you spin around, you're moving forward. So that was the image of the 3R spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now can we do the,
So let's
do you have
just
more to
talk.
say?
No, no, no.
All right,
All
you
right.
go.
So let's jump in, let's just talk about, I guess, to finish this episode up, we'll just talk about the first section. And then you have it's loud.
What?
That's all. It's just kind of loud. That's all. Um, all right. So in this first section of recognition, we call this section kind of the brainy part, right? Like but it's not so brainy, but it is the part where we're giving a lot of information about how our body is wired and how attachment and wiring go together in our body. And we talk about gaining awareness, and we have relational neuroscience 201. And I think those sections actually end up being very informational, but I think they're fun. I think that they're written in such a way that you can learn a lot about your brain and your body and the integration of both of those, hopefully in a way that puts light bulbs on.
Totally. I think, we were really careful to try to make it accessible, but also with depth. And a lot of the feedback we've gotten is I think that we hit that good note of, by the way, one of the things we're going to really encourage because of the complexity and the depth of a lot of what we cover, this is a great book to read with a group. And Therapists Uncensored is sponsoring a reading group. We call it a TU Reading Pod, which is just a small group that gets together to read a book. But there's others forming all over, and we encourage you to connect with somebody around that. Partly, it's more fun to read that way, but also it's part of what we're talking about, which is about building community. So, but before we move past, so the chapter one, earning security journey, we talk about that, gaining awareness, and then relational neuroscience 201 is chapter three. But we've introduced a scenario, a couple. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I this couple is not anybody that I've ever seen or you've ever seen, and or we've ever lived, and yet it's everybody we've ever seen in some way, and in our own world, right? It We use a couple to represent really understandable, repetitive patterns that happen in conflict between two people. And so that you can have this sense that, oh, I'm not the only one that can get incredibly dysregulated about something that seems apparently very small, but can really activate into hopelessness and helplessness sometimes. And I really love this couple because we track this couple all the way through the book in different
What are their
elements. And
names?
well, we changed their names several times. DJ,
And Mia.
and Mia. Let's take that out. And their name. Yeah, let's take that out, Jack. Yeah, you meet DJ and Mia at the very beginning, and we have lots of characters. So it's not all about romance through this whole book. There's all sorts of single individuals and groups and
Polycules and
right.
queerness. As a matter of fact, speaking of conflict, one little thing that we disagreed about, you're going to hate me saying this probably, but I didn't want to start with a cis heterosexual couple only because I wanted very quickly to get out there the inclusiveness of the book. But we ended up deciding to go ahead and do that. And you felt like that was pretty important. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yes.
Hey, notice, guys, she won that argument.
No, actually, I think we talked about the bug before we talked about the couple.
That's
Maybe.
true. Well, the bug starts it, but yeah.
Well, because I wanted it to be a place where you start off. I think this couple, anybody can relate to, whether you're cisgendered or you're not cisgendered, or whether I think they're having conflicts that everybody can relate to, whether you're gay, whether you're straight. I certainly can relate to them. And I just felt it was important to kind of start the book off in that way, in then lead into when things start to feel more different for individuals that aren't as familiar with other topics, and their body comes along with it, where it feels more familiar and more comfortable to read about queerness, etc., later in the book as your body adjusts.
It's interesting. It's an interesting point that, yeah, you were wanting to kind of have an easier on ramp.
Mm-hmm.
And because that really does represent most people.
Right. If you just look statistically, we're going to look at it's most people. And so we wanted the book, we want this book to apply to
most people, right?
Yes.
And we were also shuffling race and a whole bunch of different, abilities and different things that we were working to represent. And so it's not, there is some of that in there, but it was just an interesting little conversation that we had. Now, so that's we get into Relational Neurosciences 201 is that, by the way, was the chapter that Steve Porges read for us and signed off on. So very happy about that. We think it's comprehensive but accessible. I think it hits a good note of okay, it talks about implicit memory, right to right relating. We cover Alan Shore. We really try to get into the clinical, but we also it's just one chapter. It's not the whole book. And after we read that chapter, we incorporate that language through the rest of the book. So implicit memory, right to right, ventral vagal, all the language now we use for the rest of the book.
Right.
Well, not too jargony.
Yeah, I don't think we keep it jargony, but let's talk about that. Why is that important? In order to be able to make some rewiring and change in our relationship, why would anybody need to know about implicit memory or about ventral vagal or about hardwired types of activation in our body? And I think that's the crux of why we wrote the book in a way, right? And that is that when you start really understanding what actually is happening, if there's examples where characters in the book have maybe an overreactivity to something that even in their own mind, they know it's silly, they know it's ridiculous. How often, just think about that, just thinking of, how often do you say, I can't believe I did that? Or I know this is silly. I know I hear this from clients all the time. I know this is stupid. I know you're going to think this is stupid. And I don't think it's stupid. And partly because I have, fortunately and through privilege, a deep understanding of what happens in our body and why things get stuck in implicit memory. And by knowing that, it really sheds so much light, and not only on yourself with self-compassion, but you quit seeing people in your life as stubborn or ridiculous. You have this insight like, oh, now that makes sense.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of it's not me, it's my amygdala.
Yeah,
So that's great. So can we, just for time, can we keep going? We've got a
please.
couple more chapters because part one is our longest section. So then we've got attachment theories, coming of age story. What we did there in one chapter, we did 70 years, and we made it interesting. And at some point, I'll tell some of the stuff, the backstories of that, because there's some interesting little backstories that we cover in the book. But what's important about that is the reason we went into that kind of detail about what's the difference between the developmental attachment styles, the ABCD model, the ambivalent resistance versus preoccupied, all of that's in there. It's easy to understand. But another reason that we did it is because in the model, we pull out the salient things that have to do with clinical change. And then so it's going to be represented on the spectrum, and it looks very simplistic, but it's actually based on the specific research. So then, which by the way, leads us into the chapter 5, which is moving attachment maps, which is a bigger term for internal working model. It's internal working model plus a whole bunch of stuff: culture, class, context, lifelong things. It's not just that early representation, internal representation. But that is what we want to change in therapy. That's what actually more permanently heals. So we have a whole chapter on that.
Hmm. Well, and we also, in some of the earning security journey, we in the first part of the book, we really go in depth into the framework that you and I have developed, and that is the modern attachment regulation spectrum framework. And you've heard, longtime listeners, you've heard us reference this all, we call it Mars, but we talk a lot about the blue and the red and the green and how things fall in a spectrum and how we move them, etc. So we now in the book, you can read and see the visuals and understand more deeply, like you mentioned earlier, how all of this gets integrated. And the framework is done such a way, hopefully, that it's easy to use in your everyday life. It is not just these visuals just to help you understand, but we hope from them you can use them as a resource throughout the book and in your life about how to remember where you are in that one state of mind, where you fall on the spectrum, being able to recognize it, like, oh, I'm thinking I'm this far along on the red, and having some context for it and ways to get yourself back into security and into the middle. So I think that the outline of the Mars is a really important part
I
for
agree.
the
And
first part of the book.
it's also really good for therapists to be able to then communicate very easily to their clients.
Yes.
And an odd thing about the book I found was when we first got it and we tore open the boxes and we were looking at it, I'm like, oh, did they remember to put the insert in, the colored insert? And so I'm looking, I can't find it. I'm thinking, oh, they didn't put it in. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, it turns out it's just in a really random place. So I'm going to tell you, it's on page 204. There is some colored inserts. I have no idea why they put it there. There was some mathematical reason, but it's hard to find. So when you get the book, flip through so you can really find it and maybe dog ear it or something, or mark it so that you can get back to it. Okay, so we've got 2 more chapters
All
in this
right.
section. So the number 6 is organizing the disorganized. And I've said before, but this is my favorite character that was introduced in the book. And I have a deep, deep compassion and care for this character. And I hope you do too when you read it. And we spend quite a bit, because disorganized is the most, it's the stepchild category. And we really, I think, try to do a really good job of sorting out what is disorganization, what is dissociation, what is trauma, what is dysregulation. We talk about it on the spectrum as the tie-dyed puddle. And I think we do a pretty good job there.
And for those of you that when we're using words like disorganized and organized, et cetera, and for those of you that might not completely know what we're referencing, what we're talking about is how early attachment can be so disruptive in our bodies that we don't have a real organized strategy about how to engage. And you need to understand, and it's helpful to understand what that looks like, because you could have a disorganized kind of early attachment and not really be able to recognize it. It also represents how trauma hits our body. So that chapter, I think, does a really good job about helping you understand how trauma is located in your body, what happens, what are the signs that you're experiencing it, or maybe somebody you care about is experiencing trauma.
We also bring in Patricia Crittenden's work around disorganization, which is really important. Clinicians that are familiar with her work tend to really love the clinical application part, and we did too. Her model itself is extremely complex, has like 26 subcategories and things like that. But we kind of, we again try to bring you the best parts of that, and just want you to know it's updated with her information. And then, just for time, let's get to the chapter 7. Again, this was the longest section, but that was the hardest chapter.
That was a bear.
It's called when Systems Create Insecurity. We had more people read that chapter than we had read out just about anything else. Thank you, Glyceria and Deborah Chapman Bentley, Glyceria Perez, and many other people for hand-holding us and schooling us and helping us try to get that right. So that really talks about how that you can't, like, for example, poverty, you can't, those kids will often, because of adversity, score as insecure, but you can't impose that thinking on someone who has not had the benefit. As a matter of fact, just thinking of the idea that attachment security is also an unearned privilege.
Right.
That attachment security, natural security, that is also an unearned privilege. So we get into that. That's
well, and I think the important part of that chapter is to think, to expand beyond that attachment and how we relate in the world is primarily and only to do with our early caregiving experience. In fact, it is not, right? That is foundational. It's part of your early implicit experience. But even that has to do with a much broader, whether it's early development or throughout your life, you were impacted by the systems that you were raised in, the epigenetics, the culture you were raised in, your ancestors and how they were treated and how that's located in their body. And that we have to broaden the idea of how we see attachment to include all of that.
I am glad that you spelled that out a little bit more. I think that's really very, very important. And because we really are, I hope this gets recognized, like we really are expanding the idea of what attachment security means. And the early researchers, this is back in the 50s. So, we've got white European wealthy scholars that are doing this work, yet only 5% of the world is represented by that group. But a huge amount of the psychological research is done on that group, is by that group and on students that are that group. By that group, I mean the weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. Yet again, that's not the majority of the world. So yeah, we bring that point out really, and we talk about just a bunch of things over culture, neurodiversity, race, a lot of things that are hard, and this is just scratching the surface.
Right.
A book that I've just recently read is Jennifer Mullen, I believe, Decolonizing Therapy. It's a new one. If I had known about it, I think it wasn't out yet when we were writing this, but I am trying to get her to come on the podcast as well. So yeah, we're continuing. This is a learning curve for us, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I feel like
a lot of growth.
really early in this liberation psychology. And this is just one little thing that we can do, is to begin to push people to think in terms of a little bit wider definition of what attachment security might look like in different cultures.
Absolutely. All right. So that is the first All right. So that is
section.
the first section of the book. And so in our next episode, we will take a deeper dive into the reflection, the building agency. Those chapters, they were some of, I think, our favorite to write. And just to give you a warm up, the titles of those are what?
Go ahead. I was I was anxious about time, and the other ones are going to be short, so I didn't want to keep going.
Well,
So
I
I'm
was
like,
just
no.
I'm just gonna give a tease, so because I think the chapter titles are worth it.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So the next section, I'll be quick. I'll just do
No,
section
you know
two.
what? You don't have to be quick. This is my pathology. Why am I in a rush?
I
What's
won't be.
seriously? It's a good question. Like, why am I rushing you? It's silly. Let me just cool my jets. You
All right.
say anything you want to say. I keep looking at the thing. We're at 55 minutes. And so I keep thinking we got to stay under 60. I don't
We
know
will.
why.
We will.
I've made
Give me a
that up.
chance. Give me a
I've made that
chance.
up. All
Here
right,
we
you go.
go.
You go, girl.
So reflection, building agency. What we're going to talk about in what we do talk about in part 2 is diving deep into blue activation and how to warm it up, diving deep into red activation, how to cool it down, and trying to work to really help resolve some of the unresolved issues. So we'll leave it there. That's to come. And we made it.
You can keep going. You can
No,
keep
I'm
talking.
done. I'm done. We won't even
Please,
we
please.
won't even touch the third section about intervention. We'll just leave it there. All right. So thank you guys for joining us. We hope that we've inspired you to keep going in your secure relating journey with us.
And I hope you don't pick up my metronome that is running just a little too quick.
Oh no, there's plenty of people out there going. There's plenty of people out there joining you going, Ann, come on, move it on.
No, but your metronome is so much more soothing. You have a soothing metronome.
Not always. We know that for sure. All right, you guys. Thank you for joining us. We're very happy to be celebrating today with you.
Send us pictures, send us notes,
Yes.
send us reviews.
We would love to hear from you.
Spread the word. Yep.
Yep.
Ratings, reviews. Oh, please review the book wherever you get it.
Yes.
That would be really helpful to help other people find it. It's really, really important, and we would really, really appreciate it. So
that's of course if you think really highly of the book. If not, just send us an email.
Exactly. SecureRelatingBook.com is where you can purchase it. And that's it.
That's it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you around the bend.
We love you guys.